Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to kind of wade into the waters of long-term relationships.
Oh.
And specifically how the comfort of routine can sometimes morph into, well, the enemy of connection.
Yeah.
So to help us kind of navigate this topic, we've got a really interesting source to draw from a personal account from a couple who bravely shared their story.
Yeah. I think those personal accounts are incredibly valuable. They give us that real world perspective, like that lived experience that you don't always get from just research data or, kind of those abstract theories.
Yeah, they're really letting us peek behind the curtain of a relationship.
Exactly.
And their story starts out, totally relatable. They're head over heels, like deep in that honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
The author actually describes it as walking hand in hand, losing track of time. Those late night talks where you feel like you could tell each other anything.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds magical.
It does, and it's worth noting that this honeymoon phase, it is more than just like a cultural cliche, right? Like it's actually rooted in like some powerful neurochemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine.
Oh, wow.
Which flood our brains during the early stages of attraction, and that's what creates that intoxicating feeling of euphoria and connection.
Oh, so it's like a drug.
It is, but like any intense chemical high, it's not sustainable in the long run.
So how does that transition out of the honeymoon phase usually happen? What are the signs?
Well, in this particular story, routine starts to kind of creep in.
Okay.
They describe those deep, intimate conversations, gradually shifting to just more practical matters.
Oh.
Instead of discussing dreams and aspirations, we're talking about, grocery lists and whose turn it is to do the dishes.
Right.
Spontaneity gives way to predictability. Friday night adventures become, Friday night Netflix on the couch. Each person, lost in their own phone.
Oh, I've totally been there. It's like
Yeah.
you get so comfortable with each other that you kind of stop putting in the same effort. And then before you know it, you're stuck in a rut, spending more time alongside your partner than actually with them.
Exactly. And that's where the real danger lies. Routine itself isn't inherently bad. It provides structure stability, which is important for any relationship. But when routine starts to chip away at that sense of excitement, that shared joy, that feeling of truly being present with your partner, that's when it becomes a problem. The flame starts to dim, and if you're not careful, it can eventually go out completely.
It's like going from a roaring bonfire to those barely glowing embers, and you don't even notice it's happening until it's almost too late.
That's a great analogy. And the longer this goes on, the more frustration can kind of build. In the source material, the author describes their partner becoming increasingly irritable, accusing them of not paying attention, of being constantly glued to their phone. And, on the surface, these might seem like just petty complaints, but they actually speak to a much deeper need for connection and validation. Everyone wants to feel seen, heard, and valued by their partner.
So how do we go from those magical early days to feeling like our needs aren't being met? I feel like this is a story a lot of our listeners are connecting with already.
Absolutely. And it's something many of us have likely experienced in our own relationships. We're going to dive more into that right after this.
So we've painted kind of a bleak picture, this descent into routine. But the good news is this couple didn't just give up. They actually got pretty proactive about, rekindling that spark. I'm curious how they went about doing that.
Right, so they came up with a 4-step plan.
A 4-step plan.
To combat routine and inject more intentionality back into their relationship.
Okay.
It was almost like they approached it like a scientific experiment.
A scientific experiment to save their relationship. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. What was step 1?
The first step was establishing a weekly love ritual.
A love ritual.
Yeah. They chose Thursday nights to just disconnect from the outside world. No TV, no phones, no distractions, just dedicated time for each other.
I like that, a love ritual. It sounds so much more intentional than just date night.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about creating a sacred space for connection amidst all the chaos of daily life.
Right.
And they didn't always do anything elaborate.
Yeah.
Some nights they'd cook together, other times they'd play board games, sometimes they'd just talk for hours.
Oh, yeah.
The key was really that dedicated time for focused connection.
Makes sense. It's like carving out that time to really see each other, to remember why you fell in love in the first place.
Yeah.
But I imagine date nights can get routine too if you're not careful. Did they do anything to kind of shake things up?
That's a great point, and that leads perfectly into step 2.
Okay.
Stepping outside of their comfort zones together.
Okay.
They started trying new activities, things they'd never done before, like salsa dancing.
Salsa dancing. Wow. That's awesome. It sounds fun, but also maybe a little intimidating if you've never done it before.
Well, apparently Samir, the author, was hilariously terrible at it at first.
Oh, no.
He describes stepping on Mathilde's toes more times than he could count.
Oh, my God.
But they laughed their way through it. And ultimately, it became this shared experience that brought them closer.
That's great. And it reminds me of that saying, couples who laugh together stay together.
Right.
But beyond just the fun factor, is there like a psychological reason why trying new things together can be beneficial for a relationship?
Absolutely. Novelty. It plays a huge role in attraction and connection. When we experience something new, our brains release dopamine, that feel-good neurochemical we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's the same chemical that floods our system during those early stages of falling in love.
Oh, wow.
So by trying new things together, couples can actually reignite those neural pathways associated with, excitement and pleasure and bonding.
It's like hacking the honeymoon phase.
It is. It's totally hacking the honeymoon phase.
I love that. So trying new activities together can actually trigger similar brain chemistry to when you first met?
Right.
I'm definitely going to have to try that. What were the other 2 steps in their plan?
So the third step was all about cultivating gratitude.
Okay.
Each night before bed, they made it a point to express appreciation for one small thing. They valued in each other. It could be anything. A thoughtful gesture, a funny comment, a shared moment of laughter, even something as simple as just listening patiently.
Right. It's like shifting the focus from complaints to appreciation. Instead of dwelling on what your partner's doing wrong, you're actively looking for the good.
Exactly.
But did they say if this simple act of expressing gratitude actually had like a noticeable impact on their dynamic?
Yeah, absolutely. Samir describes how this practice gradually changed the whole atmosphere of their relationship.
Wow.
They started noticing more of the positive things about each other.
Oh.
And the little annoyances that used to, trigger arguments seemed to just fade into the background. They were basically retraining their brains to focus on the good, which created, a more positive and loving emotional climate.
It's like replacing a negative feedback loop with a positive one.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, what about the 4th step? You mentioned it might be a little counterintuitive.
Right. The 4th step, and perhaps the most surprising, was about carving out me time.
Me time.
Mathilde joined a painting class, something she'd always wanted to do but had put off for years.
Okay.
And Samir joined a book club.
Okay.
They realized that nurturing their individual passions and interests actually enriched their relationship as a whole.
At first glance, that does seem a little counterintuitive.
Yeah.
You'd think that spending more time together would be the key to reconnecting.
Right.
But it sounds like what they were doing was creating a better balance.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that a healthy relationship isn't about 2 halves becoming one.
Right.
It's about 2 whole individuals choosing to share their lives.
Yeah.
Having separate interests, pursuing your own passions, it gives you something new to talk about, new perspectives to share. It allows you to bring your best self to the relationship.
So it's like absence makes the heart grow fonder, but in a more nuanced way.
There's not actually absent. You're just creating space for individual growth.
Exactly.
Which ultimately benefits the relationship.
Exactly. And it reinforces the idea that self-care isn't selfish, especially, in the context of a relationship. When you take care of your own needs and nurture your own well-being, you're actually better equipped to show up for your partner.
This is all so insightful. I'm curious to hear how their story unfolds, especially after implementing these 4 steps. What were the results of their experiment?
Well, you can probably guess.
So they had their love ritual, tried new things, expressed gratitude, and carved out that me time.
Yeah.
Did it work? Did they manage to rekindle the spark?
It did. Samir describes a remarkable transformation in their relationship.
Okay.
He talks about rediscovering a sense of playfulness and intimacy, that feeling of being truly seen and appreciated by his partner again.
Wow.
And what's really striking is that it wasn't about like magically returning to those early days of infatuation.
Okay.
It was about creating something new, something even deeper and more authentic. So they weren't trying to recreate the honeymoon phase, but rather evolving and growing together.
Exactly. It's like they took all the raw material of their shared history, all the ups and downs, and used it to build something even stronger. They emerged from this experience with like a renewed sense of commitment and a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. It's a beautiful testament to the power of intentional effort in relationships.
It's also a great reminder that challenges, while difficult, can actually make a relationship stronger if both partners are willing to do the work.
Right.
It's like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the more resilient it becomes.
I love that analogy. And it reinforces this idea that love isn't just a passive state of being.
Right.
It's an active choice we make every single day to nurture and prioritize our relationships. It's about showing up, being present, and making those small but consistent efforts to cultivate connection.
It's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and forget to do those little things that make a big difference. This deep dive has been a great reminder that we have the power to rekindle that flame even when it feels like it's fading.
Absolutely. And what's really inspiring about this story is that it provides a practical roadmap for doing just that. Their 4-step plan, the love ritual, trying new things, expressing gratitude, and carving out that me time. It's something we can all apply in our own relationships.
So listeners, what resonated with you most from this deep dive? What are some small changes you can make today to break free from routine in your own relationships? Maybe it's instituting a weekly love ritual, or finally trying that salsa class you've been thinking about. Or maybe it's just making a conscious effort to express more appreciation to your partner.
Every relationship is unique, of course, but the underlying principles are universal. It's about recognizing that routine is a silent relationship killer, and that intentional effort can make all the difference.
Remember, love is a journey, not a destination. And every step we take, no matter how small, can bring us closer to creating the kind of fulfilling and lasting relationships we all deserve.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into, the complexities and joys of long-term relationships.
Until next time, keep those sparks flying.